Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how you can get the most out of your Transformers Haslab UNICRON by essentially completely taking the entire back kibble off the figure and creating both a planet mode and a robot mode. Yes, it is indeed possible to basically get 2 for 1 here with Unicron, as like many of you expected, this figure here is a heavy shell former and none of the integral planet mode pieces actually make up Unicron's robot mode. This is a very simple tutorial and all you shall need for it is one screwdriver, as you only need to remove 3 screws and all of the other panels are on mushroom pegs, so are therefore very easy to actually detach. Now, before we get into this tutorial, I would really appreciate it if you could all smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and of course click that notification bell. And something which I must mention before we actually get into the video is that please take this tutorial at your own discretion. This Haslab UNICRON is an incredibly expensive piece, and so therefore if you are not 100% confident about actually removing screws from the figure, then I would highly recommend that you just leave him how he is, fresh out of the packaging, although it is a very simple tutorial. So without further ado, let's de-kibble Unicron and see what the robot and planet mode looks like without being one complete piece. And so starting off firstly here with Unicron's legs, to begin with you're just going to want to remove these panels here on the sides and just essentially completely detach this entire region and extend it here on this transformation joint just like this. We can then take this section and of course just simply detach it here from this cradle, and this here is actually the easiest piece to detach as it is merely held on via a mushroom peg. Now, something which I also must mention before we get into actually removing these pieces is that I would not recommend you do this multiple times, as of course the mushroom pegs are eventually going to become loose and those screws are certainly going to end up wearing out, which could cause some damage and could actually prevent you from getting this figure back to its original factory setting. But it's very easy to just simply remove this mushroom peg here, so you just want to wriggle this here off the joint and you can see how this entire piece did come clean off, so we'll just set that there off to the side. This one here is where you will require the screwdriver. Now, of course, there are various different pins that you could probably remove in order to get a slightly cleaner look for robot mode. Most noticeably would be actually removing this pin here, although I personally have never been a fan of actually dislodging pins from plastic, so I would recommend just taking the screwdriver here to this particular section. So just unscrew this. And you can see that we have indeed removed a very, very long screw that does actually keep the two halves held together. So once again, set this off to a safe place, as if you do lose this, it will be very difficult to, of course, restore Unicron back to his factory default. And once that is removed, you should easily be able to just completely detach this piece here of the planet shell. So we can then set that there off to the side, and already you can just see how clean Unicron's leg now is. We now, of course, no longer have half of the planet actually sitting on each of the legs, and just for a comparison, you can see that that is how Unicron comes fresh out of the packaging, and then this here is obviously how he comes once you do remove all of the kibble. You can, of course, neaten this up, although you're not probably going to get it in a way that would actually look 100% perfect, as of course all of these joints are designed to actually accommodate the kibble, but you can tidy it up to the best of your ability, and I've got to be honest and say that it definitely does look a lot better. Of course, we shall repeat the same process here on the opposite side. And now with both of the legs completely de-kibbled, I would highly recommend that once again you keep those 2 screws in an incredibly safe and secure place, as if you do lose them, it will be very unlikely that you will be able to reattach these pieces without actually shredding some of the plastic inside. So set this planet section here, and then we'll move to the main back piece that everybody appears to have an issue with. Right, so now we turn our attention here to the backpack of Unicron, arguably the biggest eyesore that this figure here has. Personally, upon getting the figure in hand, I don't really have much of an issue with this, although if you are going to want to de-kibble Unicron, then this is definitely a vital element that you will want to, of course, take off. Now, for this particular segment, I have decided to take the head off, just as we are now working with the backpack, which will actually have to flip over in order for you to actually access the screw, and I have just attached the arm here, although that is not essential, it's just so that I can give you a better understanding of what is actually going on. So to begin with, of course, you're just going to want to pull the horns here from the back and untab this, and of course repeat this here on the opposite side so that the backpack is now completely detached. I would then recommend that you unhinge all of this here, and much like you would for transformation, do not worry, I definitely do still have that transformation tutorial coming out, you are going to want to lift this here up. Now, as you can see here, we do in fact have a screw. Now this screw is essentially the allspark of this entire back region. Without it, this entire section does not function and it will come completely clean off. Now, as the clearance here isn't the greatest, you can see, of course, due to the nature of the design, we are working with a circular panel. I would not recommend applying too much pressure to actually straighten this out, just enough so that you can actually access the screw. So once again, we are going to be removing this particular screw here. And once you begin to feel that the screw has loosened, we can now completely remove this entire back section. Now, much like I mentioned when we removed the screws there for the legs, I would highly recommend that you keep an eye on this section and, of course, this circular metal section, as without it, it will be pretty much impossible to restore Unicron back to his factory default. So we'll tidy Unicron up, we'll put the head back on, attach the arm, and then I'll showcase all of the different planetary pieces that we have, of course, removed, and I'll show you how the planet looks without the core robot attached, and of course how the robot looks without any of the vital planet pieces attached. And so, just to give you a very quick overview on all of the pieces that we have actually removed, this is what is hanging off of Unicron's back. So of course, this entire section here is the backpack. This does become the front of the planet, the top, the bottom, and even some of the sides, and then everything that we get on the legs, this panel, this panel, this panel, and there's also one tucked away at the back, is all hanging off the legs. So when you do look at it like this, to be honest, I won't sugarcoat it, it doesn't look the best. Unicron is of course probably one of the biggest shell formers that we have ever gotten. Does it hinder my overall experience with the figure? Nope, I definitely still really do enjoy it, and when we do get into that transformation tutorial that I have coming out, you guys will see that the transformation is actually incredibly enjoyable. So yes, the planet can essentially coexist without having the core robot. Now of course, it's going to be hollowed, seeing as the actual stand attachment is held onto Unicron's body, you aren't actually going to be able to place this on the stand as the planet will be hollow, and seeing as there is nothing inside the planet, it will actually hinder the structural integrity, meaning that you are just going to be dealing with a hollow ball that can easily become detached. But yes, the planet is a complete separate piece. You could remove all of these components and you would not actually hinder the core robot at all, which I know will put off many of you, but that is just to give you a very quick overview on what we have actually just removed. And here, for the moment you've all been waiting for, at least for planet mode, here we have the complete shell that we've just removed from Unicron's back, fully formed into the planet. Now of course I have got something to actually prop the circular sphere up, as we do not want an Armageddon event, as seeing as we don't have the stand attached, it will simply just roll around. But you can see that yes, we can effectively completely create Unicron's planet mode. Now once again, I'm pretty certain this is going to turn many collectors off, as the robot mode literally doesn't really have any part to play in the planet mode itself, and the same can also be said for the planet. Vice versa, the planet does not really play any essential role in getting him into a robot mode. Just to give you a quick turnaround on what we're dealing with, the actual mechanism that we have here for the jaw can still work. As we spin around here to the side, of course, as we no longer have the arms, it is completely hollow inside. And then as we spin around here to the back, once again, seeing as the arms are no longer attached, it is just a complete hollow piece. And the arms do actually hold the spikes as well for this side. So once again, we don't have these spikes, but we do have these ones which are attached to the claw. Now, something which is quite hopeful is that if a third-party company was to come out with some kind of filler, they could essentially hook it in between this section and, of course, the bottom where the stand inserts. And then we could get two sections which would jut side to side, which could then create these circular ports that the planetary rings could attach into. And if it did actually have something inside it, the planet would hold together exceptionally well. So I'm almost certain that when this figure does become more readily available, once Hasbro Pulse does begin shipping these, I'm certain that a third-party company will come out with some kind of upgrade kit, as it is definitely more than possible to have this planet as one solid complete piece if they were to release some form of internal structure just to hold it together, and of course create the two circular sections to hold the planetary rings on. As it stands, you cannot actually peg the planetary rings here onto the planet mode without the core robot, but as you can clearly see, we do have a complete circular Unicron planet which is merely just hollow on the inside. And so, turning to the Chaos Bringer himself, here we have Unicron's robot mode completely de-kibbled. Now, as many of you are probably asking yourself, what is the difference? Literally, as far as the robot mode is concerned, there is no difference whatsoever, at least here from the front. If anything, it actually makes his front profile look a little slimmer. As you can see there at the legs, we now no longer have those two circular sections hanging off the side due to him being completely de-kibbled. I personally have never really been a huge fan of actually removing backpacks and kibbles from Transformers unless it is actually intended, like Earthrise RC or any of the War for Cybertron parts formers, as I've always found the end result to be rather underwhelming. I'm not a massive fan of now how light Unicron feels without any of this kibble attached, and to me it does make him look a little too skinny. So after this review I will actually be reassembling him. I just merely wanted to show you all that it is definitely something that you can do if you are passionate about actually removing the kibble, and of course to give you a side perspective on what we're dealing with, I'll just very quickly remove the rings on either sides. You can see that Unicron is now completely kibble free, and there is no circular planet here on the back at all. So it does definitely clean the figure up exceptionally well. I imagine that you could remove this piece here if you were so inclined to. I personally haven't found a seamless way to actually do so without, of course, removing these back screws and then potentially taking this whole panel off, which is a whole nother story in itself, and it's just something that I'm personally not willing to take the risk on. But the figure is completely painted. The silver here is paint, and this is something that you don't really see with the kibble attached. All of this orange here is completely painted. The back of the legs is painted, so it certainly won't be a complete eyesore if you do decide to remove any of the kibble. The figure still does look decent, and of course now without the kibble removed it does make posing him a lot easier, and you do not need the stand at all. Whilst of course you didn't really need it with the kibble attached, it was something that I personally recommended as the figure was back heavy. But with that now removed, Unicron is perfectly able to stand unaided in pretty much any pose at all. So overall it really does just come down to personal preference on whether or not the kibble for you is so much of a drawback that you would want it removed from the actual figure itself. And so, there was my tutorial on how to completely de-kibble the Transformers War for Cybertron Haslab Unicron. I really hope that this video was informative for you all, and for those of you who do wish to proceed on your way to oblivion to actually removing all of that back kibble, it is something that you can absolutely do. It is rather straightforward. Of course, there are only actually 3 screws that you need to remove, and I personally once again would highly stress that you do not do this multiple times, as of course you are eventually going to wear away the actual screw head, and where the screws do actually go into the plastic, you are once again going to actually wear away the plastic to the point where perhaps the screws will not insert. So for me, after this review, I will take the planet shell and completely reattach it to the figure, and that is how it will remain for the rest of eternity. But you saw in this video that the planet can completely coexist without the robot mode, and I really would find it to be a missed opportunity on any of the third-party companies, of course, especially in regards to upgrade kits, if they weren't to actually come out with some kind of internal structure so that the planet could look just a little more filled out when you do have it without the robot mode attached. And then of course if it had 2 circular sections on the sides, you could then peg the planetary rings, or they could also come out with a secondary set of planetary rings so that you could have Unicron with them in robot mode, and of course Unicron here in planet mode. The robot mode of course looks so much cleaner, and in some ways is actually more accurate to how he appeared in the 86 movie, but then you are removing a significant amount of the figure. I'd say more than even 50%, as the planet is actually heavier than the robot itself, which is quite surprising. The thickness of the panels is actually quite surprising. So the figure, just as far as a play experience is concerned, does not feel the best. He does feel a lot lighter, and to me it just gives this overall sense of incompleteness. Once again, the argument will always remain on whether or not this is lazy on Hasbro's part. Upon actually removing all of the panels for the first time, I did begin to think that maybe they could have found a better way to actually engineer this figure, as the planet really and truly shouldn't be able to come completely away from the robot without there being really and truly any difference to the robot itself and of course to the planet. There should have been more key vital elements of both modes that would need to retain in order to keep the overall design of one another, but as you can see they can definitely both coexist without being attached. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Once again, I would really appreciate it if you guys could all smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and of course click that notification bell. And any questions that you have regarding Haslab Unicron or this particular tutorial, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below, and I shall try my absolute best to answer each of your questions. I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.